Good evening, and welcome to the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners meeting for Wednesday, April 13th, 2022. On our agenda tonight, we have two committee meetings, the Grants and Community Development Committee and the Building and Planning Committee. And we will start with the Grants and Community Development Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you, President Sinai, very much, and good evening, everyone. We have three issues on our Grants and Community Development Committee meeting this evening. They all pertain to county recommendations and requests for funding as a part of its coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds, which is the same as the ARP program, but being managed at the county level. So the first is I'd like to make a motion dealing with weatherization. The motion is to authorize the township to submit a concept recommendation for the county's existing weatherization program to the Montgomery County Recovery Office for coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. Do I have a second?
If I may, as a point of order, isn't it for it to be a recommendation to the board?
Okay, recommendation to the board to authorize submission, a concept recommendation. Thank you for that.
Be glad to second it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. 2 seconds from Commissioners Sinai and Bernheim. And I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments by the board. Seeing none and none on, oh, yes, yes, Commissioner Kramer.
Submitted as a proposal or an idea to the county?
This would be considered an idea to the county, and I would turn to our township manager for further explanation.
I thought, it was my understanding that this was being submitted as a proposal, not just as an idea, but as a specific proposal.
So if I may, yes, the motion that's on the table now is different from the agenda item. The suggestion was prepared by our sustainability manager, Paloma Vila, and she did make a suggestion to request funds for the township to run a weatherization program. This, of course, it has been changed by the motion to suggest that it is something that we would submit as an idea to the county to ask them to operate the program. In terms of the program itself, if you want, Paloma is here and she can speak to the details of the program. We think it probably has merit one way or another in order to allow more folks to receive weatherization services. The only question is whether, if the township were to be awarded the grant, we'd have to go hire somebody to run the program, and whereas the county does have an existing program that is funded for weatherization. So, but in terms of details of the program, I don't know if you want Paloma to speak to that.
Well, let's hear from, thank you for that. Let's hear, before we ask you up, let's see if there are any other commissioner questions or comments.
Well, I would like to finish.
Why don't you let,
Yes, of course. Sure.
finish?
Yes, of course, you can finish.
I believe that this should be submitted as a project because the county and I have been working with Paloma on developing this idea and this proposal. It isn't just what exists in the county is different than what we're asking for, because it would be a significant expansion of the income levels at which somebody could be eligible. So the county program that exists is only for homeowners that have up to 200% of the, I guess that's federal poverty level. And the proposal that we have is to expand this, because that would make so few people in the township eligible. And there are probably many people who are what could be considered moderate income, which would be up to 400% of the poverty level in terms of income. And this would be an expansion of anything that the county currently provides. And I believe that this should be done as a project. We have partners lined up that Paloma can speak to, including Lower Merion Affordable Housing Corporation, And another organization that does this type of work in Philadelphia that is willing to work with us. And this is a well-developed project, not just an idea for something to do. And I would move to amend the motion to allow us to submit this as a project instead of just an idea to the county.
So I would not consider that friendly. So is this, at this
So
time-
motion's been made.
Motion's been
For a
made.
second.
Motion is a second.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask for a second on not considering this comment as friendly.
So there's a motion that Commissioner Kramer has made, and so your question is there
Oh,
someone
right.
who seconds her
Right,
amendment?
so do you have is there a second for Commissioner Kramer's?
I will second it because I would appreciate the opportunity to debate it.
Right. Thank you. Because I was going to say the same thing, and I was going to request maybe if when was here, that we can get an explanation as to what this is
Exactly.
about, and then what Commissioner Kramer has outlined is a little bit different, at least is what I digested from what we read, and maybe
Yeah,
that
it
will
is-
help
it
us
is
out.
different.
Exactly.
It's different. Go ahead.
Yes, so the staff recommendation is to submit a project proposal for the county funds, which would improve energy efficiency in Lower Merion homes, save money, and increase comfort for residents. It would be managed by a third-party contractor that has experience with demand-side management programs. And that third party would facilitate directing these funds that we receive to organizations who are already doing this work, but are limited in who they can offer their services to by the Department of Energy. So essentially, the program already exists. It's a Department of Energy program that's been around since the 1970s, but it is limited, as Commissioner Kramer said, to residents who make under 200% of the federal poverty level. So this would talk about expanding it to residents under 400% of the federal poverty level, as well as providing services that sometimes prohibit residents from getting the services in the first place, which is, like they call it, the pre-weatherization program. So sometimes there's structural problems like roof leaks that would prohibit them from being able to do the weatherization. So it would expand that. And then there would be a policy component as well, looking at how we might review or update some of our policies and procedures or codes to improve energy efficiency in perpetuity outside of these, limited number of homes that will be affected as part of a small project.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Stevenson.
Madam Chairperson, can you clarify what is the rationale for the proposed to hold up moving forward with as it originally was?
Sure, I'm happy to expand on the thinking there. The major, I think, shift, as we discussed it internally with staff, is that the county already has a well-established program. And we, in conversation with the manager's office and with other board members, and recently, it would seem that by getting in front of the county on a program that they already manage and are equipped to handle, that it seems more appropriate to have them manage an expanded pilot program. And it would be better suited as a proposal for a recommended expansion of a program to be piloted by an existing weatherization program. They have the staff, they have the infrastructure, they have the connections to local partners, and it gets it off of our plate into a plate that already exists and does so beautifully. So that was the rationale behind the shift from making a third funding request and keeping it in the county and expanding that county activity. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I ask you a question, please?
Yes.
So, having heard what our chairperson outlined, can you speak to whether based on your well-designed proposal here, is equipped to address those pieces at our level? And if you can't, I apologize. I'm most happily turn it to the township manager.
I've not seen, I would say I don't know for sure if the county could handle that. The downside of that is just that it would be spread countywide and we wouldn't be able to concentrate that in Lower Merion. But I think if we submit it as an idea and somebody else and the county does what we're proposing to do, I think that they could make it happen the same way we could. It just wouldn't be a Lower Merion project, it would be a county project.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Comm.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Of course.
Two questions. The first is, I'm looking at your memo, and I think it's similar to Chris's memo in terms of the standards the county's going to apply in terms of whether or not to approve these. And understanding that COVID relatedness is a pretty amorphous term, but how is the weather stripping and weatherproofing related to the impact of COVID?
Sure. So the biggest impact that weatherization will have is saving people money and making their homes healthier and more comfortable. So in general, people have been impacted financially by COVID. So this would lower their energy bills on average about 15%. So like broadly speaking, people who are hurting financially will be helped. But the pandemic has also disproportionately affected people of color, and energy burdens also disproportionately impact communities of color. So there's a direct correlation there.
Okay. The second thing is, I'm looking at your, I guess it's on page 5 of your memo, and it would be, the project would be managed and so forth, and would have, I guess the final bullet point, recommendations for full-scale implementation of low to moderate income weatherization services. Again, this is a grant. This is not an ongoing source of funds from the county. So is the proposal that we're expecting the county to make a recommendation to the township? Or what exactly are you referring to?
So I'm referring to, in the course of the next 2 years where this is being implemented, starting to examine where other funding sources might exist, like in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, where there's lots of funding coming out for energy efficiency projects and energy, energy projects in general, or us making a recommendation to the county demonstrating the effectiveness of our little pilot and saying, now we recommend that you make this county-wide, or to the Department of Energy or the folks that manage the existing program, making a strong case for why this should be expanded beyond the 200% threshold.
Okay, I think I understand that. I guess my only concern is that there are funding sources available now. We were seeing American Rescue Plan, the county's seeing it, and there are one-time, sort of once-in-a-lifetime funding things that are not going to be repeated.
Right.
So we have to just keep in mind as we go forward that there really almost has to be a sunset provision on whatever we do, so that it is, some period of time we have the funds, we use the funds, but we can't undertake an obligation based on this going forward without sort of a full consideration by the board as to where we are, whether that's something that the township wants to fund as opposed to something that the county is going to fund with these monies available to it.
Absolutely, and this proposal has a very finite end point of 2024 with targets for what we will achieve in that set timeline when we have to stop using the funding or have spent the funds. And that's also why the policy component is worked in, so that this project can have those transformative impacts beyond when the funding ends. So there's no requisite for this to continue on. It will be impactful in the time that we have and in the window that we have. But of course, if new funding comes available, then we can make recommendations
So
to use that
there's
money.
nothing, just to put a final point on it, there's nothing in here that would obligate us to go forward with this at some future point.
No, and I think a lot can be accomplished just within that window that we have.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Commissioner McComb and President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. Paloma, so some more questions for you. So I was trying to figure out what it is that this proposal does above and beyond what the county already does. And it seems like there are three parts to this proposal. Maybe you can just tell me if I have this right. So one is to provide weatherization for people making less than, or households of four making less than $55,000 a year. Another is to provide weatherization for households of four making between $55,000 and $110,000 per year. And then the third is pre-weatherization for everyone. And of that, the county does the under $55,000 weatherization chunk.
Yes, exactly. Plus
Okay.
a policy component.
Sorry?
So there's four legs of that. So the fourth thing that you didn't mention would be a policy review.
Okay, and the policy is for after whatever this pot of money is.
Can you say that again?
A policy review, so reviewing what we can do in our township policies and codes to, not to do weatherization, but to help homes be more energy efficient or encourage or incentivize homes to be more energy efficient.
Okay, and it says on page 5 that the goal is to weatherize and pre-weatherize 100 Lower Merion homes with annual incomes less than $200,000 of federal poverty, that's under $55,000, and another 100 between $55,000 and $110,000.
Right.
So it's really the second 100 that is in the pre-weatherization.
Exactly. So
Okay.
it's really the 100 new homes and pre-weatherization of, we don't know how many of the,
Okay,
of the
and
ones.
so of the 20,000 homes or so in Lower Merion, do we have a sense of how many need pre-weatherization and weatherization? Is that in this income category?
Yeah, so
I have no
know-
idea what the size of
Yeah, so I know how many are in the income category. I don't know how many of those live in homes that need to be
Okay.
weatherized, but, let's see. So about 4.4% of our residents are below 100% of the federal poverty level.
Okay,
8.9% are below 200%, so that's inclusive of,
okay, so
And
that's
that-
1,800. 1,800, sorry, that's residents or households?
resident.
It's a households? Okay, so it's households. Okay, so that's about 1,800.
And then 13% are between 200 and 400%.
Another 13%?
Yes.
Okay. And does this apply only to homeowners?
No, it includes
So
residents.
you can get your landlord to do it?
Yes,
No matter
and-
how much your landlord makes?
Yes, but there are stipulations that the landlord can't increase your rent, can't end your lease as a result of these upgrades. So there's some stipulations that the existing programs have in place to ensure that it is helping the resident.
Okay, and so if we propose this to the county as a policy, we're saying, okay, do this extra stuff just in Lower Merion.
Yes.
And if we propose it as an idea, we're saying, we think this extra stuff should be done wherever it needs to be done, including Lower Merion.
Yep.
So it's whether, do we go to the county and say Lower Merion has special needs on this dimension? Or do we say, you're overlooking a group that needs this throughout the county? Is that how I think?
Or we say this might be easier to do on a small scale in Lower Merion before you do it township-wide, and when we want to demonstrate how it can be done.
Okay, and there's a question for our manager. When it comes to administering it, right, so it says here it's a third-party administration, but one of the questions was, what's the township have to do if we're administrating it? Is it that we're just duplicating the effort, or is it actually township staff effort above and beyond what we would pay for with county funds?
Well, again, we'd have to hire an independent administrator to run the program.
Okay,
No program like that is totally without township staff involvement, right?
Okay.
We have to manage the consultant then, but we wouldn't be the one actually reviewing the applications from the residents who would like to participate.
okay. And the proposed project cost request from the county would include all the costs except for the oversight of the consultant?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That was my question. Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Sure, thank you, President Sinai. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Zeloff, please.
Commissioner O'Neill, it's questions and comments or just questions?
Both,
Okay.
yes.
Normally, I'm very supportive of grant requests from other governments. We get them regularly, and they're a good thing, but this isn't really a fleshed-out grant proposal and request, and it's brand new. I mean, it hasn't come to this board, hasn't been discussed by an advisory board. I saw it for the first time, and I imagine most of us did Friday when we got our packet for something so significant. That's surprising to me. But the original motion made by Commissioner O'Neill to recommend to the county that they expand their program with their ARP funds makes sense to me. For us to take it on does not make sense to me. You know, it hasn't been, there's lots of basic fundamental questions that have been asked. This isn't a program proposal that quantifies or identifies a specific need in the township. It speaks generally about national issues, and perhaps there's some similar issues here, but it's hard to glean from this what the issues are here in Lower Merion. 1.75 million, there's no basis for that amount that's in here. And it suggests that, you know, if county, but we've learned that tonight. So if there's a program in the county and all the benefits of a program that has been described by Commissioner O'Neill, including all the experience in running a program as complicated and detailed as suggested here, for us to do it, to duplicate it here, it's hard to justify. To recommend changes to the county that would meet perhaps some needs here as well as needs elsewhere in the county with their ARP funds sounds reasonable. On this, in this memo, that, you know, and President Sinai asked the question about what would be the indicators of achievement. The last bullet point says recommendations for full-scale implementation of low to moderate income weatherization services. By whom? That recommending to the county that they make a full-scale implementation of their program? It's not clear.
Would you like me to help?
Sure.
Okay. So one point of clarification, we wouldn't be duplicating efforts. We would be directing the funding that we receive from the county to the same organizations that do the work now to enable them to expand their client services. But directly to Lower Merion
That
residents.
sounds like a distinction without a difference to me.
Well, we're not doing.
Anyway, could you answer
work. Okay.
the point I made about the
Recommending.
last
yeah.
bullet point?
Yeah, so that's, if, as I mentioned before, if opportunities arise for new funding through various means that would allow this to continue and do another 100 homes. By the way, the amount is based on the number of homes that are being weatherized. So if a new funding source comes available and we identify the availability to be able to do another 100 homes in 2026, then we would recommend that. If not, then we wouldn't. And we would recommend it to ourselves essentially, but if not, then we would recommend to the county to expand their services to this client area, to basically take what we did as a pilot and adopt it countywide.
You know, this is, as has been stated previously, this is one-time money, and it doesn't really make sense to me that one-time money goes for something that would be ongoing. The county has something that's ongoing and presumably in their various funding sources and budgets. We don't have that. And so I think the proposal to make a recommendation to the county is the way to go here, and for this township to take on something this expansive and this different and this, way out of, beyond what we typically do in the way of providing services to our residents doesn't make sense to me. And it's, as our manager has said, you never have something that's handed off to a consultant and he comes back and says, I'm all done. It doesn't work like that. And so, he or she. And so I support the motion made by Commissioner O'Neill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kramer.
I would like to perhaps provide a little bit of background on how we got to this point and how this proposal came forward. I'm sorry, this is too hot tonight. It's quite warm in here. So this is an issue when we've been looking at American Rescue Plan Act funds for the township. We spoke with the Environmental Advisory Council to talk to them about what would be potential ideas and potential things that we could do that would do double duty. In other words, have sustainability benefits and also meet some of the goals of the American Rescue Plan Act funding. And one of the ideas that came out of these discussions was the idea of providing this type of expanded weatherization, if you will call it, for sustainability reasons, because we have goals for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions that we've adopted. And one of the things that is going to be necessary for us to be able to meet our goals over time is to have some increase in energy efficiency in our existing housing stock. This targets households that have been basically disproportionately affected by the pandemic, and also has the benefit of helping to improve and maintain our affordable housing stock, instead of allowing our affordable housing stock to decline. So in looking at the fact that we could tick off 3 major goals with this, we started pursuing these issues. Paloma did quite a lot of research on it. I spoke with Mike Leibowitz at Lower Merion Affordable Housing Corporation, who believes that this is very important and is something that they'd be very interested in getting involved in and helping us with, and that they have some experience with. And then there are organizations on the county level and also in Philadelphia with whom we could partner and who are interested. At least one of them that does this is very interested in partnering with us to expand it. And I think that we should, as we looked at this, we thought that this is an excellent concept for the county to use, as Paloma said, really as a pilot program. In other words, let's try it. We know that we have households here that have a need for this. We know that we have housing stock that can use this. And if this becomes a successful program, it's something that the county or another organization could look to us as having a leadership role in moving it forward and then expand it after this. And I don't think that we have the luxury of sitting back and saying we don't have to do everything that we can on sustainability issues right now. Climate change is very real, and if we can improve our affordable housing stock, help disproportionately affected lower income households, and at the same time help to combat climate change, this is a win-win-win project. And we should submit it as a project and show the county that we can do this, that this can be done and should be done on a broader level.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
you, right,
I know this may surprise you, but I am going to agree and disagree with my colleague, Mr. Zoloff. The agreeing part is I would agree that I wish this would have been rolled out a different way in the way that it would have presented, brought before us, because originally I did not have a good understanding and about how to support this. However, I would give compliments to our sustainability manager who has done a great job of outlining this, and I think that what she has outlined is that this is a grant that has an opportunity to be a pilot for a need. Is there a need to show specific what their needs are in our township? I think that we could work on that, but is there a need? I would say that yes, and that if it was very clear that this is a pilot program that could, with the understanding that it has an end date, has a sunset date, that when the funding runs out, it runs out. But if it's a pilot program that shows a need, that the hope that we will set a tone for the rest of the county to say that here's what Lower Merion did, and that we should expand this and do it in other places. It may be something to do it that other places will pick up on this funding. So I will support this, and I would hope my colleagues would also support this based on the fact that this is a grant that we are looking to say, how do we, even if we help one or two folks, that's one or two folks who are needy in our township that didn't have it at this point. Thank you.
So he's supporting Joe's motion. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Commissioner Stevenson. Commissioner Bernheim, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. One quick question. How did we come to the number 1.75 million?
So that was based on the average cost per home for just the weatherization services, plus an average of what a pre-weatherization service costs, times the number of homes that we're targeting, and the administrative fees of the consultant.
So then, assuming that each home, whatever weatherization it's going to need, is a case-by-case, home-by-home analysis, where did those numbers come from as to what those costs would be for the weatherization or pre-weatherization? Because you don't know what the scope of the work that's necessary.
Given the limited amount of time there was to prepare this, I could only look at averages. What on average it costs to weatherize, what on average it costs to pre-weatherize, and then a multiplier for the consultant fee.
Right. And then,
Like you said, every project's going to be different.
so where, and I'm just asking you to educate me, please, I'm not like
No problem.
challenging you, and I hope it doesn't come across that way. Where did you get this data and information as to what these costs were for these averages?
From the existing weatherization service, the Department of Energy Weatherization Assistance
okay.
Program, and the county and Philadelphia partners who implement the programs. They have averages of what it costs them to do each one. And then the ones that do weatherization, they have other funding sources that they do that with, and they have averages.
So they have published information saying on the average cost for the number of houses that we do, weatherization, pre-weatherization, here's the ballpark
Yes.
cost, right?
And
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, in our CDB, there is some overlap with our CDBG program as well that does home improvements, and there could be some synchronicities there with.
And then you indicated that you then factored in the consultant fee, and that came from where?
Conversations with the consultant.
That would be hopefully a good source.
Yes.
If it's a good consultant, right? So then, if we were to do this internally, as I understand the current motion on the floor, we would then have to, have a consultant and our staff to go forward and do this. Correct me if this is inaccurate. What they would be doing, though, is the same that the county already does, except there'd be a different cutoff level for some of the services. That's the difference?
So the consultant wouldn't be doing the work. The consultant would be working with the folks who are already doing this work to help them expand. So to do the paperwork and bureaucracy involved in expanding their service offerings. So the same people that are doing it now would continue doing it. We would just have someone that would help them do that, help them implement it.
All right, so I apologize if I'm slow on the uptake. The expansion consulting work is to expand this how? For the scope of the work, the number of people, the cutoff point
The
for who
cutoff
could
point.
use it?
The cutoff point and
Right.
adding the pre-weatherization.
Right.
So the agencies that do it are the Energy Coordinating Agency in Philadelphia and CADC in Delaware and Montgomery counties. And they would be doing this work for Lower Merion residents, just the same as they are now, but they would be doing it for residents with higher incomes, and they would be doing the pre-weatherization work that sometimes kept them from being able to help Lower Merion residents in the past.
And I'll pepper you with one, maybe two other questions, I promise not more than that. Do we then have any, from the numbers that you were able to get, from what those average prices were for the jobs and the number of homes and the consultant fees, any type of projection then, if we were to do this, what would be either the potential number of additional homes that we would be able to service, and with what dollar value?
I'm not sure what you mean when you ask with what dollar value.
So if we have 1.75 million,
Mm-hmm.
we're saying, all right, we got to that number because we figured out what those average costs were for the different type of work.
Mm-hmm.
And within that, did we include the average cost for those which would be in that expanded category that
Mm-hmm.
otherwise the county would not be able to serve under their current requirements?
Yes, so
okay?
the bulk of
So
the
that
cost-
delta, what's the difference dollar-wise that we're going to be able to dump in, poor word,
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to be able to put into a program to assist people?
So about, I think we estimated about $15,000 per new home that's being weatherized and/or weatherized. So that's about $1.5 million for 100 homes. Am I getting that? I don't have all the numbers. Yeah. And then adding on a little extra to do, or having a buffer in there to do pre-weatherization for homes that already qualify. 'Cause
So of the one.
most of that
Right,
cost
okay.
is for new.
Okay, so of the one,
non-
all right, so of the 1.75, you would say 1.5 would go to homes which otherwise
Yes.
would not qualify if the county was doing this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And that blended into that is from the remainder is the cost for the consultant, or is that?
That, yes,
Is that
blended,
that's
yes, blended.
blended into the
Yeah.
1.5? Okay. Thank you. I said I'd only ask two more questions. I asked three. I apologize.
No,
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Commissioner Bernheim, thank you. Those are good questions. Does anybody have other comments or questions? Yes, President Sinai.
Yeah, so sorry, so I only asked questions before, I didn't
No,
realize
no,
we were doing
it's-
comments and questions.
no, it's
So-
okay.
So just briefly, this notion of a project versus a proposal to the county, or an idea to the county that everyone in the county should get to do this. I suspect that if we come forward with a proposal for Lower Merion and the county looks at it and says, hey, that's a good idea, they will do it for the whole county anyways. Having said that, like, if we want the funds to be sticky in Lower Merion, then maybe we should just ask for Lower Merion as opposed to the whole county, and see if we get it. I don't share Commissioner Kramer's view that there's a big sustainability difference between the idea and the township version. I think if we weatherize a house in Lower Merion or we weatherize a house in some other township in Montgomery County, it will have the same climate sustainability impact. And really, the idea versus proposal is, do we want to try and emphasize Lower Merion to the county or not, and sort of express to them what our specific needs are. And this gives us an opportunity to do it. So given that, I think they are probably ending up being fairly similar. And the goal here is to pre-weatherize and weatherize houses in Lower Merion that otherwise would not qualify. It makes sense to try, I guess, and see where the ships may fall. At least that's how I see it.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from other commissioners? I only have a few, and that is and I think we still have a motion on the table that we need to square up before public comment. But I think that Commissioner Kramer said it best whenever she said that this really is in concept form. We may believe we want this to be a project to move forward as a part of our application package to the township, but I think that President Sinai is spot on when he says that the county will review this particular weatherization one, and say this is an incredible idea, and it is. It is, I understand the writing is sound, it's well-researched, it's well put together, it's a good package, but it's not a package that the township will say, this really should be Lower Merion's project. They won't. They're going to say the need is greater in other townships. And if we're really talking equity, we're talking Pottstown, parts of Norristown, areas that are different from where we are. They're amazing communities. I've spent a lot of time in both of those municipalities. They are different and they have greater need than we do. So I think we have to be careful about calling this equity. I don't know that this particular proposal deals with that in a way that is authentic. So I would just be really careful about that piece. Maybe there's a way to review it that I think would be better for the township, county committees who are going to be reviewing this and funding or not making those decisions to deny. And I also think that we can lead the way because of this proposal. There's a lot good in it that other townships will want to emulate and wish that they had the staff and the capabilities of staff to create something like this, and the boards. And I think it's Mr. Mitchell is, one of, maybe a different Mitchell, but these are fine academic citations that are used. Not so important to a county project. They're looking to promulgate ideas and get them out to help community members. So the exercise is a little off base in my humble opinion. And I'm just not sure that we are ready to present this one as a funded request rather than an idea. If it's an idea, then we can work together with the county to create a stronger program, perhaps one that they can manage and own, and we be the root of it, and they will always defer to us for improvements on it. So that would be my recommendation, is that we keep that we vote down the motion to change the language from concept to request, and then turn it to the public for public comment. So thank you. That's all I have to say. So yes, Commissioner McComb, please. McCann, sorry. Too many.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I intend to support Commissioner Kramer's motion, but I also want to say that, and perhaps Commissioner O'Neill is being a little bit too modest. We often talk about deferring to our subcommittees. This came out of the Grants and Community Development Committee. So Commissioner O'Neill is the chairperson, Commissioner Stevenson and I are the vice chairs. As far as I know, none of us knew anything about this until Friday, and when it came up on the agenda, I never received any emails before, and I certainly don't need to be, that's not that that's never happened before. Sometimes you hear a little more about things, but for something like this that was more unique, I think it would have been helpful to have information before this got on the agenda, maybe a subcommittee meeting, or just have it be fleshed out a little bit, because Plum, I think you even mentioned, you said you had a limited amount of time to prepare, so it looked like that there just wasn't a lot of time to get things done. So I say that because I have a feeling that this is not going to be a unanimous vote, and it may not actually go on consent, so we may see another vote on a week from now on April 20th for the Board of Commissioners. So if anyone has any points that they'd like to bring to my attention or any other members of the board, I'd say come back out a week from now. I'll certainly be I'll be listening, but as for now, I support Commissioner Kramer's motion.
Thank you. I appreciate that you made the comment about because I had actually, that was in my notes to say, next time, please run it through the committees, run it through your fellow commissioners so we have a heads up.
Can I make a motion to table to a date certain, and that would be next week, because I understand this has to be completed by the end of the month? And
It's too late.
We have a lot of committee meetings next week.
but
If you guys put it on the
Hear me
board
out, if
agenda.
you'd be so kind. Because I'm listening to what's being proposed here to do internal, and all of these, well, we could get this person in, we have talked to that one, and, all of the predicates behind the ideas are good, but it's not fully baked. In the same way you're saying you were short of information, the committee itself didn't get this until it was in the packet, but yet we're being able to ask to even amend that which is being recommended by our staff to do something internally and respect it. I don't think we're prepared to make that decision because we don't have the data, and that's what everybody here is saying. So since there's I understand a timing issue, we would have to make this request to the county by the end of the month, which would mean the board would have to approve it on the 20th in order to do so. That if we lease between now and then, take the time to get the information so people will have it and we'll be, we can do it quickly, committee, because it's going to come to the board simultaneously anyway, and we're going to be asking for the same information. But as a matter of protocol, that's really how it respectfully ought to be done.
Okay,
That's correct.
okay.
That's the
Is there
motion.
a second?
But to a date certain.
What about our, does that override?
Yeah, I guess there's.
Yes, that motion will be heard
Override,
now.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All right, we have a second then.
To table the amendment or to table?
It would table the entire thing, so
Entire
then we
discussion.
would have the time to get the information, which respectfully I think we need in order to make an informed decision on your request.
But we have to vote to see whether we're tabling as amended.
No, just
No,
tabling,
just
period.
Just tabling, period. Okay,
Correct.
so we have a motion, to table on
the floor.
on the floor. Does anybody have a second? I'll second it. Oh, you, okay.
No, Commissioner Churchill did, I made the motion.
Yeah.
First and second.
So motion by Commissioner Bernheim, seconded by Commissioner Churchill. All those in favor of tabling, raise your hand.
To a date certain.
To a date certain
To the
of-
20th.
Is there discussion of a date certain?
If there's a
April-
date certain, there is discussion, you are
so-
correct.
So to a date,
So
table
you
to a
do need
date
to take,
certain.
you need to take comment on
Oh,
this one.
got
It's
it,
not just a
okay.
motion to table.
Okay,
Okay.
so to a date, thank you, to a date certain to Wednesday, April 20th.
Correct.
And before we vote, I'd like to go ahead and have comment on the floor on that.
Non-debatable.
Yes. Any,
It's non-debatable.
No, Commissioner Churchill, a table to
Because
a
that's a
date
date
certain
certain.
is.
we did it to the 27th.
Well, yeah, our township secretary just informed, we actually have on the agenda on the 27th,
We have a board-
a
we have
board
to
meeting,
raise that,
and
yep.
that would give enough time, so I would amend the motion that we would do, the date certain would be to the 27th.
Yeah. So just for public, so we're clear on the date certain for the tabling will be Wednesday, April 27th. So before we vote, I want to make sure that we have comment from the commissioners and from the public
Not
before
on
we
the
vote.
table.
Not on the table? On a
That's
date
correct.
certain it is, isn't it?
No, there'd just be comment from the board on the date certain,
Okay.
not from the public.
Okay, are there any comments from the board on the date certain? Yes, Commissioner Kramer, please.
I think that it would probably be better to have the date certain be April 20th, because Paloma is going to need time to put this in the format, if it's approved, that the county wants. And that's going to be a hard task to ask her to do in 3 days between the 27th, a Wednesday, and the 30th, which is a Saturday. And I think it would be, in fairness to Paloma, we should consider this and let her know one way or the other by the 20th.
So that's a question to follow up to that. Ernie or Paloma, since this is really more memo form for the next, since we're tabling it, can we update it so that it's more fleshed out and we're looking at the most finalized version for the county by the 27th?
Well, I mean, it is indeed a short time frame for Paloma to turn this into a grant application or a concept proposal to the county. You literally would have to do it in advance and get ready and just not submit it until after the board acts on the 27th, because there is, while the county says they made it as open and as wide as possible, still the grant application runs like 8 pages, so it's not like it's a simple, sweet, and short application. In the meantime, if commissioners have additional information that was not provided or answered here tonight, we need to know what that is. We don't know what information anybody's missing here tonight. So we would need these specific questions here pretty quick to us.
About the detailed budget, yes, President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes.
So Ernie, just a follow-up question. So is the proposal for an idea to the county significantly less onerous than the
No, you have to go through the same form that you're submitting a grant application to submit an idea.
So I would suggest that my sense of the board is we were debating idea versus proposal, and therefore you would do that same effort either way, because my sense is that this would go forward as one versus the other, and not that it's going to be a not at all. Having said that, I think you recognizing that a lot of our colleagues are not here tonight, I still think that we should vote on this tonight to just get a sense of where this room is, and just in the sense of expediency, moving things along. So I don't see the same pressing need for tabling, but I also don't have the same. I think I understand what's going on here. I think I understand what the issues are and the numbers are, and where they came from, and that they were well researched. And so I'm prepared to vote. So I will go that way.
Commissioner Zeloff.
So our managers asked for specific questions, which I thought had been identified, but I will provide them again. Paloma identified data by speaking that's not in the memo. It should be documented, because I don't quite think that how she presented it is how it was interpreted correctly. Paloma talked about this complicated system of consultants going to go to the same people the county uses. That should be described, because it doesn't make sense as verbally presented. But if there's some kind of better explanation as to how it will actually function, I think that would be useful. Again, if the county's got a system and they're using these CAAs, these community agencies, and we would hire someone to go to the same community agencies, I don't get it. And so, it's a distinction without a difference to me. But that should be described. Apparently, there's a consultant in mind. That person, company should be identified. We talked about Triad a few weeks ago to do the study, to be a consultant for our own internal engagement process. So we all know it's going to be Triad. If there's a consultant that's been identified, let's find out who it is. The consultant's fee should be specified. If it's 2%, 1%, $250,000, tell us. I mean, it's in the numbers. So the $1.75 million should be broken down. How do you get to that? I mean, that's what a proposal typically entails that we would see, because we ask a lot of detailed questions based on the details we get, and we're sort of looking for details that aren't here. So that's what I've got now. I probably can come up with some others.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. And Commissioner Bernheim is following.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't want to do the pile on. The difficulty I have with voting on it is that, and that's why I was asking the questions here, how did we get to where we are? And then there are other items that come up. There was we started out with the motion from Commissioner O'Neill, backed with a recommendation by our township manager not to do this internally. There's a thought process behind that hasn't been shared with us. So I'm uncomfortable voting without all of the information and data, before us. So that's why there's the request to table, and then we can make the decision. And I think the point that President Sinai just made is something I was going to ask, is that you want the temperature of the board? We're going to do something, one way or the other, all right? Fair bet. And so that you can start on that proposal, and it would be a last-minute change on the 27th, one way or the other. I suspect that won't be a heavy lift, but by giving you and the staff time to respond to the questions put out by Commissioner Zeloff, myself, and I'm sure there will be follow-ups and others, then we can do this as an informed decision. So I would just ask that folks, consider that. And then, I'm sure Commissioner Kramer is going to have items that she can educate us about, because she's indicated she spent a lot of time, so that we can consider her proposal fairly as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much, President Bernheim. So this is a very robust conversation about a really important amount of money. So I really appreciate everybody's patience and the information provided by staff. So I'd like to go ahead. Roll call?
No, well, you don't have to roll call the vote on
But
the
we're going to
table.
go ahead and call the vote on the table to until Wednesday, the 27th of April, with questions to staff soon. So be mindful of final versions coming out. So all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
This is to table. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to table, 2 opposed to the tabling, 1, 2, 3, and 3. So the motion passes to table. So that, thank you for everybody's patience on that, a great conversation. So moving on to, thank you, Paloma. Okay, so number 2 on the Grants Committee is another authorization to the Board of Commissioners to submit funding requests for Cynwyd Heritage Trail Affordable Housing Property Acquisition to the Montgomery County Recovery Office for Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, SLFRF. May I have a second? A second from Commissioner McComb. Thank you very much. And I believe this is Mr. Leswing. Chris, if you have anything to, if you don't mind keeping it with brevity in mind, shall we say. Thank you.
This is very direct. There's a project in the CIP project 4499 that is for acquisition of some additional property for the Cynwyd Heritage Trail. It's identified as a potential $1 million project. In the funding, there's $500,000 of township funds allocated, and then another funding. The direction is to find other sources of funding. As this grant became available, staff is looking that perhaps this could be that other source of funding. Just point out that as the Cynwyd Heritage Trail has developed over the years, only 9% of the Cynwyd Heritage Trail is done with local money. The other 91% has been done with grants, and a variety of grants. The Cynwyd Heritage Trail has been funded with historic preservation grants, stormwater grants, federal highway congestion management grants, federal transportation grants, and a number of others. And we felt that this was another way that we could tack on to do that same thing.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Commissioners, questions and comments? None online. Okay. Commissioners, I'm sorry, Commissioner Zeloff, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Yes, of course.
And Chris, in the long list of grants, you may have mentioned it, that the county was also a grantor.
Correct. That was an open space grant. Yes.
The county commissioners were at the grand opening of the Cynwyd Heritage Trail. It was a multi-level government-supported project, and it was so well done. So thank you for pointing that out. This grant application before us has been discussed publicly. It was added to the capital budget during the budget process last fall. It was proposed by a commissioner during the solicitation of commissioner ideas for round 1 of ARP funding. It has its own CIP number, 4499. We've all heard about this. It's documented in the CIP. This makes sense.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from commissioners or comments from commissioners? No, seeing none. Okay, great. I believe I did not get a second, so may I have a second?
I seconded.
On,
Yeah,
oh, you did.
Commissioner
Thank you.
McComb did.
So Commissioner McComb seconded. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and call it to a vote unless we have any questions from the public. Here comes somebody. Questions or comments? We'll take both. Okay. Well, no, we'll take comments. But first, give us your name, please.
Yeah,
and your
Micah
address.
Sneed, Ardmore Progressive Civic Association. We didn't have time to poll members about this, but I hope that I speak on their behalf, or at least in my capacity as president. Came here excited because we saw affordable housing. Not sure where the affordable housing property is, what part of this would facilitate acquisition. Couldn't find it in the CIP. So just curious to hear more about that, especially having seen the last presentation and all the questions that everybody had. But that said, we do want to acknowledge that Ardmore is only the center of the township, not the universe. But we're thrilled to see staff looking for opportunities for affordable housing wherever they can find it. And we look forward to hearing a lot more about the connection between this project, grant application, whatever it is, and the affordable housing property acquisition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Any other comments from the audience in person or online? No, okay, thank you. All right, seeing none.
Just a quick
Yes, of
response
course.
to the public comment, which is, for property acquisitions, we don't give details because that could potentially drive up the price. But it's something that staff is fully aware of and the commissioners are aware of, but we don't publicize that as a matter of policy and really never have.
And we're glad you couldn't find it.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call the vote then for the authorization for the Cynwyd Heritage Trail Affordable Housing Property Acquisition. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands and saying aye. Aye, okay, great, and we have online, and no opposed, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Lastly, I may ask Charlie Doyle to come up for a moment. This next, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to the Board of Commissioners to submit funding request for Ardmore House expansion to the Montgomery County Recovery Office for coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. May I have a second? Oh, thank you, Commissioner Stevenson, thank you. And if you'd just like to give a quick overview of the thinking with Ardmore House, we would appreciate it, and then we'll have discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank
So I'm
you.
here requesting Grants and Community Development Committee to recommend the Board of Commissioners that the staff pursue grant funds, the amount of $6 million for low-income and senior housing. Some important details here tonight. We will be coordinating with the Ardmore House on Friday, so that's very important for us. We need their support, and we respect their autonomy as an organization, and we want to have their collective input, and we're going to be asking for support to keep going as staff. But tonight, we're just looking for the recommendation by this committee for a generational opportunity to pursue these $6 million in grant money for the project submission, again, for that SLFRF money. This is an expedited process, as we know, and we've been moving through concepts from the drawings that were created in 2010 and moving forward to expand the additional 4-story 30 units to the rear of the existing Ardmore House. The township would like to dedicate, we'd like to ask the township to dedicate the parking lot. That's Lot 3. It's the post office lot there. And currently, we're working towards increasing our housing stock of affordable housing. And we really want to work through this project to find an opportunity to do such.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I just have a quick question to start off, and you mentioned it a little bit, and I'm always very sensitive about getting ahead of nonprofit boards on our decisions.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you hit the nail on the head there, and I just really appreciate that we're making sure to let them be our guide on their needs before we just sort of jump in. And I think it's a great proposal, but. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Yes, Commissioner Stevenson.
I don't have a question. I do have, is this all right for the comment
sure,
as well?
yes.
I would just want to say that I would like to thank this moving forward in the conversation. I think the Ardmore House is a symbol of a need, their waiting list, and their need to be supported for our senior citizens. And when we talk about affordable housing, our senior citizens cannot be left out of the conversation, so therefore I'm glad. But more importantly, as Mr. Doyle said, this is a beginning of a conversation that has to be led by our colleagues on the board at Ardmore House who have been dedicating their time over the years to this concept, and I look forward to us continuing this possible work moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson, very much. Commissioner Zeloff, please.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. This proposal was reviewed and discussed by the Ad hoc Affordable Housing Committee, so ably chaired by Commissioner Stevenson. This proposal was, the expansion of Ardmore House was discussed publicly with engagement of Ardmore House board and staff 12 years ago, I understand from the memo, and there were some reasons it didn't advance, and this seems like a good time to reinvigorate that process. Actually, I think the motion should be contingent on support from the Ardmore House board to really nail down that we don't want to get ahead of that board. But this advances could significantly advance the long-discussed and enormously challenging topic of affordable housing. And I guess I would describe it slightly different than Commissioner Stevenson. I would say our senior citizens should be front and center in the affordable housing discussion. This is a affordable building with a wait list. That is significant. So there's a proven, demonstrated need based on the data. And so to expand it, which expands affordable housing and would presumably begin to reduce the wait list, makes sense. And to take advantage of a one-time project with one-time money from the county makes sense. So it all fits together. While I have the floor, if I could ask our manager, because he mentioned it to me earlier, what's before us is a request for a $6 million grant on a project that could be $8 to $10 million. So are there other sources for grant funds for a project like this?
There are, and we, obviously it's up to the board how much you want to ask for, but we suggested 6 because granting agencies like to see somebody else with skin in the game. But there are other sources to fund affordable housing. One of the most common used sources right now is tax credits that you can get through the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, and we think if we went to that agency with an application that shows that we already have somewhere around 60% of the funding already allocated for the project, it would stand a pretty good chance of being awarded tax credits to finance the remaining piece of the project, or most of that anyway.
That's, I think, very helpful, Ernie. Thank you for that. And this is a well-thought-out proposal, and I think we should proceed. Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you. Yes, President Simon.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. So I will, echo what my colleagues have said, that this is a terrific project, and it'll be a delight to apply to the county for funds for it, and hopefully they will agree we'll be able to move this forward. It's not without contribution from the township, because we're contributing a parking lot, and sometimes that's a big deal, and sometimes it's not a big deal. Sometimes it has a lot of value, and sometimes it doesn't. So let me ask our township manager, for this parking lot, one of the things that really can make these things go forward, because land assembly is often a real hiccup, is us smoothing the road for that. But what is it that lot 3 is? What are the township are we actually kicking in here?
Well, this lot is a permit lot currently, and it is hard to give up parking, of course, at any point. However, I understand that was the big drawback 10, 12 years ago when this project was discussed. There was a reticence to give up the parking. Things have changed a little bit now. We have a 3-story parking facility on Cricket Avenue that is vastly underused. So we have some parking capacity. If this project would be lucky enough to go forward, we think we could meet some of the loss of parking spaces in that facility.
And so let me clarify my question, because I'm actually not at all concerned about the loss of parking, though maybe I should be with that answer. But instead, if the township lot, is it an acre of parking that could be something else, or is it a handful of spaces? Is it an individually developable lot? What is it that we're contributing?
Well, it's essentially what our piece left that is not already leased to the Ardmore house is essentially sort of a flag lot, if you will. Our parking lot sits behind the Ardmore house with a few spaces along the entrance drive. It's not an ideal spot for development. It would be very difficult to use it for much of anything else because of the way it sits. By the time you started calculating in setbacks, you wouldn't have much left to do anything else on.
Got it. So it sounds like a really perfect use of this lot is for the expansion of the Ardmore house, but I'm taking away from that.
It was a good plan that was developed 10 or 12 years ago.
Okay, thank you. That is my questions and comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
O'Neill.
Commissioner McComb, please.
Quick, very brief comment. I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said, which I join in, but I do note Commissioner Stevenson's comment that it's sort of it's a tough problem. But what I'm observing is that in the past 6 weeks or so, we seem to be making progress. We're approaching a difficult problem
in different ways. And my sense is, including what Manager Neal just said about the tax credits, which I think is a great idea and something we can certainly explore. But my sense is the more we do, actually get into it and do it, the better we'll get at it. And I think that's, rather than looking for a simple solution to a difficult problem, I think we have to approach it in a multifaceted way, and I think we're doing it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Bernhardt.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, excellent point, Commissioner Comm. I have a question for you, Mr. Lewis. A comment was made by Commissioner O'Neill about not getting out in front of, the actual organization. Have we received, or do we need, like, board approval from the Ardmore House before going forward with this? Should that be part of this motion?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's imperative, because of their timing and because of the expedited process of this whole ARP fund availability.
Right.
It's been tough to get their board together, kind of at the helm of the indication that we were even pursuing this, 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So in that time, we've done our due diligence in reaching out to certain members, especially the Ardmore House, but other members throughout the county here. So we do have support from speaking with the county as well. So there are other players that are involved. Genesis Housing, who helps to assist in the Ardmore House itself. So we do have other players that are involved as well.
Okay, all right, because I cannot imagine that they would object to it, and I'm sure they'd be all in favor of it, but should we make part of the motion that in the recommendation of the board, it would include getting the approval from the Ardmore House board, or is that going to be logistically too difficult?
No, it's imperative. We can't move forward without them saying that they agree
So
with
then I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the board, that in considering for recommendation, the Board of Commissioners authorizing the staff to pursue the $6 million in funding for expansion of the Ardmore House through submission of Montgomery County Recovery Office for coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds contingent upon receiving approval from the Ardmore House Board. Is that?
Yeah, that's very
Good.
friendly. Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thanks. That's great. So with that, do we have any other commissioner comments?
To your right.
And yes, Commissioner Kramer, please.
I just wanted to thank Mike Leibowitz from the Lower Merion Affordable Housing Corporation for bringing this issue to and this plan from the past to our attention, and for providing us with the basic information we needed to get this rolling.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, great. Any comments from the public? Oh, yes.
Real quick.
Mrs.
Hi, Marion
Mrs.
Phillips.
Hi.
I am here as president of Ardmore Housing for the Elderly, which you guys know is Ardmore House. I want to thank you guys for keeping affordable housing very high on your priority list, and for revitalizing the notion of Ardmore House's expansion, which, as you just mentioned, was 12 years ago. We considered this project. We did not move forward for a lot of reasons, which I'm not going to go into tonight, but it is a complicated project to envision. And we would very much like to see the full proposal, and we're looking forward to meeting with township commissioners and staff on Friday to kind of review what it is you're committing to the county, so that we can see, what's the best way that we can move forward in a positive way, not just on behalf of the Ardmore House Board and the current residents, but also in terms of involving, a public process, which we very much discussed lots of the first time around. We've got neighbors that are immediately adjacent. As you mentioned, there's the parking issue, and we just want to make sure our civic is really involved, and that everybody is on board this train. We don't want anyone to kind of feel like this is not a worthy project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I love that, on board the train. That's a good expression. Thank you very much. Any other public comments in person or online? Yes. Hi.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner Micah Steeds with Ardmore Progressive. So this was a happy surprise for us on Friday. Cut to the chase, everything Commissioner Phillips just said. We would double down on We hate that this has been sitting around for so long, but we're glad somebody dusted it off and remembered it, and we hope that some of the challenges last time it was proposed can be answered. The biggest hurdle to affordable housing construction in our country is land acquisition. So we have the land, which is great. I worry a little bit that we've talked in the past about not having land that the township controls or owns, when in fact we see that we do have at least one parcel right here that is a good fit. And so just want to make sure that staff and commissioners are really kicking over all the rocks and dusting off old plans to figure out kind of what the opportunities are as we look at a tremendous amount of funding for housing in our community right now. So this sounds like a great opportunity. I'm sure y'all have heard from Ardmore House residents and board members before about pedestrian safety, one of many issues with this property. That's got to be a condition of this project before it goes forward, and I'm sure there are many, many steps if the county were to approve it. But we can't wait for the Piazza development to improve West Athens and that pedestrian exit. That could never happen. That could be 10 years from now. We just don't know. There's also the School Lane intersection where we had a fatal hit and run accident 2 years ago. I have been told that I cannot speak for Ardmore House tenants because we've supported development in the community without pedestrian improvement. So I hope y'all will make that an absolute requirement. And again, to Commissioner Phillips' point, the residents and the staff at Ardmore House can guide you on these issues, so please let them and make them an important part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Okay, great. Thank you. Anything online? Okay, Ms. Seltzer. Good evening. Hi.
Hi, Adrian Seltzer, Winwood. Good evening, everyone. I am really happy to see this initiative for affordable housing go forward. It's really a shame that money wasn't available when the Knox home went up for sale. But we do what we can do. And I was wondering how many of the commissioners have ever been in Ardmore House. So thank you for this project resurfacing. And I just want to know how many of you have actually visited the facility. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay, thank you. I'd like to go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor of the Ardmore House proposal with the friendly amendment of the funding being contingent on the Board of Ardmore House's approval, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the vote passes unanimously. And I want to thank my colleagues for their tremendous patience, and thank you to the public for being here this evening, and like turn it over to BMP or back to President Sinai.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Commissioner O'Neill. To Building and Planning, and recognize its Vice Chair, Commissioner McCann.
Thank you, President Sinai. There are 5 items tonight on the BNP agenda. The first item is an authorization to release funds held in escrow. There are 2 items on here. Does anyone want to remove one of the 2 items, or can we move them together? Let's see. All right. Seeing none, I will move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improved guarantees in accordance with Section 135.5 of the Township Code for the following: 23 West City Avenue and 6 Bala Avenue, the French International School, and 27 West City Avenue, AutoZone. For a second, thank you, Commissioner McComb. With that, any commissioner questions or comments? Okay, and is there any public comment online or in person? Okay, with that, I'll call it to a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, and any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. Our second item, agenda item, is the approval of certificates of appropriateness, and there are 2 items here. Does anyone want to move one off the list? Otherwise, I was going to move them together. Okay. All right. Seeing none, then what I intend to do is I'll make a motion and that is to move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at their meeting held on April 5th, 2022. The first is 25 to 27 Haverford Station Road, Haverford Station Historic District, 2210. And the second is 21 Rittenhouse Place, Ardmore Commercial Historic District, 2212. Is there a second? Nope. Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Any commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner Zeloff.
2527 Haverford Station Road is Serena and Lily. We had some debate in this room many months ago whether we should move forward to allow that store to make changes in order to open. They have done so. It is open. It is fabulous. It is great for the Haverford Business District and for Lower Merion Township, and this is another very small change that should proceed.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner McComb.
Just to follow up on that, I agree. I think we had some debate about painting the brick, and there are some purists who don't like painted brick, but I think it looks spectacular. I think it kind of jumps out at you, and I think Harb and everybody who's worked on it did a good job. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Okay. Any public comment online or in person? No? Okay, see none. I'm going to call this to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
Scott, Todd, raise your hand.
Any opposed? Okay, and that too passes unanimously. All right. Agenda item 3. These are the approval of historical commission applications. There are 2 on here. Does anyone want to move one of these off separately? Okay. Seeing none, what I will do is then make a motion. I'm going to move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on March 28, 2022. The first is 701 West Montgomery Avenue in Bryn Mawr, the Baldwin School, and the second is 401 City Avenue, Marion Station, the former Christ Chapel of the Episcopal Academy. Is there a second? Let's see. Okay, President Sinai, thank you very much. Before we go on to vote or commissioner questions or comments, I did notice that something I think was kind of missing from the materials. I'll ask Madam Secretary if you could put that up on the screen here. Just to underscore really the historical significance of what we're talking about tonight. You can see a very young Commissioner McKeon in the spring of 1996, graduated from high school at the Episcopal Academy Christ Chapel. And I do have good news. If you're an awkward-looking high school child, as I was, you can grow up and become an awkward-looking adult. So, thank you. Any other commissioner? Commissioner Zello.
Commissioner McKeon, for the reason you just identified, and because I don't quite understand why we're even looking at this. This is a path in an underpass that why we're looking at this, how it affects a distant, no longer, deconsecrated chapel, is surprising to me. I don't know that I need a long explanation, but I just felt that it was important to make the comment.
Okay, yeah, this was sort of an item we were on the fence about, but I consulted with the Historical Commission Chair. We felt it would be better to review this than not. It's something that is in the vicinity of the chapel. It's more than a path. It's a grade change because it leads to an underpass. So it involves digging out a portion of the earth leading up to that building and the removal of an existing path that also went up to it. So fortunately, the commission agreed that there was no real impact to this, or a minimal impact at least, and they recommended approval. And I'll note that in the past, they did review the installation or creation of the path that's being removed back in 2011, I believe. So there was some precedent for reviewing items like this one.
Thank you.
Thank you. President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. No one is graduating from high school in that location anymore because Episcopal, as you know, left the township. I just want to address Commissioner Zeloff's a very reasonable point with just observing that paths and grade changes in this location, I agree, is completely innocuous, but they aren't always. And it's hard to draw a bright line. And I think the reason that we have the process we have, which is it's put in front of us, and we can discuss it if it's warranted, and we could say it's innocuous and not discuss it, if that's warranted, is the right process to catch the occasions where we do actually want to discuss it further. And I think the spirit in which pretty much every application that has come before us tonight is innocuous. We are all agreement on them tonight, and I think that's a sign of the process working, rather than leaving it to staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Understood.
Any other commissioner questions or comments?
Discuss, having a discussion.
Okay, seeing none, any public comment online or in person?
There are no attendees online.
No, it didn't, okay. All right, with that, I will call it to a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and any opposed? Okay, and that too passes unanimously. All right, so that brings us to the fourth item here, which is a waiver of the Township Code, Section 11-42, regulating open containers for hosting an outdoor beer garden in Schauffele Plaza. I am going to move to consider for approval a request for a waiver of the Township Code as requested by the co-applicants Ardmore Music Hall and Ardmore Initiative to permit patrons to possess open containers with alcoholic beverages and serve alcoholic beverages on public rights-of-way within regulated areas on May 21st, 2022, between the hours of 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., subject to American Music Hall providing the required insurance certificate documenting adequate coverage as required by the Township. A second? Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. With that, any commissioner questions or comments? Okay, and is there any public comment? All right, with that, I will take it to a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, Commissioner Manos is not with us tonight, so that too passes unanimously. And the last item for B&P is the appointment of alternate members to the Zoning Hearing Board. I am going to move to consider for recommendation to the Board of Commissioners the appointment of Michael Ims and Amanda Masucci as alternates to the Zoning Hearing Board for 3-year terms, such terms to expire in April 2025. And second? Oh, thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. I just will make some initial comments with Michael Ims. He's a member of the Haverford Civic Association, licensed attorney with a private firm with about 25 years' experience. He's worked as the Zoning Hearing Board solicitor in Thornbury Township in Delaware County from 1999 to present. So in him, we have an individual who's actually working at another township as a solicitor on their zoning hearing board, and I think it's great for someone like him to then also have time to volunteer to be an alternate on our board. And with Amanda Masucci, she's a Gladwin resident, been practicing law for nearly 25 years or so. She's a senior corporate counsel with the company and works in a real estate program, and regularly attends zoning hearing board meetings, municipal meetings in her role as a senior real estate counsel. We had a bunch of terrific applicants, and I can say very confidently, if you take these two applicants aside, we had a number of applicants who I think could have filled the job perfectly. Numerous, as often happens in Lower Merion Township, we get more than enough overly qualified candidates. So my only comments were, if you weren't selected, there were, again, an abundance of riches, and I thank everyone for applying and coming out and going through the interview process. With that, any other commissioner questions or comments? Commissioner Burnham.
Yeah, thank you very much, Commissioner McKeon. And it's at the risk of being a drop redundant of your comment, because a couple of the applicants are people who I in fact encouraged to go forward, knowing that they had a lot of skills and talent. But you're correct. This situation wasn't different than many that we have, where on one hand we can't make a mistake, and the it makes it easy, and the other hand it's difficult because you have to say no to somebody. And I wholeheartedly agree with you. Could have said yes to any of the applicants, and we would have been extraordinarily well served. So appreciate them all coming forward. And remember, we know where you live, so we will hunt you out, if we need you again. And these are for alternates, and I suspect we may need, coming down the pike, some other folks to do this once again. So thank you very much, and look forward to the work of the two who the committee has recommended.
Thank you. And to your point, I encouraged an individual to come out and interview, and as the ad hoc chair, and he was not selected either. So it's, it's a committee and it's a collaborative approach. So, President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner McKeon, and I too would like to thank all the people who applied for this position, and we constantly need people, and so there will be many other opportunities, but I especially want to thank the members of the committee and the other commissioners who joined in on the interviews, because it's important. Our various boards are extremely important to the functioning of the township, and the work that the committee goes into, the entire committee, to sift through a lot of really terrific applications is considerable and extremely valuable. And certainly I'm grateful for your service and your help. Thank you.
No, thank you. Any other commissioner questions or comments? Okay. And any public comment? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call this to a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And any opposed? Okay. Madam Secretary, that too passes unanimously, and with that, President Sinai, that concludes the business of the Building and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner McKeon. And with that, that concludes the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners meeting for this evening.